Hello, I'm Aubni, and in this series I will show you the process through which I go to make a minigame. The game that I'll be making consists of multiple minigames all at once, so it is a great opportunity to showcase different types of games that you can make, the problems to avoid when making them, and tricks I've come up with over time to make them more enjoyable. If you want to know more about the whole minigame, I suggest you watch the first episode of this series where I give a description of the entire project. In this episode, we will be looking at parkour and obstacle courses. I'm going to start by saying that I myself am really not good, and to be honest, not a big fan of parkour. This video does not aim to teach you how to make super hard courses for parkour pros, because I would be way too out of my element with that. Instead, I aim to teach you how to make more simple and basic parkour courses for your average casual player. In other words, this video is for you if you want to make a parkour course for your friends on a survival server, for example, but not if you want to make a map and publish it for the parkour community to try out. There are multiple aspects that you need to take into consideration when building a parkour course. I will be starting with what I would call the style of the course, so everything that can make your course unique in terms of design. Here you can think of using blocks with unusual hitbox, like fences, glass panes, or chains, including obstacles in your course, making the obstacles and floors move, using an unusual surface to stand on like ice, sand, or magma, giving your players effects like jump boost or slowness, and well, any other thing you can think of. I would suggest picking one or two, maybe three things on that list to base your course on, but I would suggest not to pick more than that. If you put too much different stuff at the same time, it will sort of dilute the effect of each thing and make everything seem less special. So I would suggest concentrating on a few things, but really exploiting them to their full depth. For example, there are many things you can play around when using retractable platforms without having to add ice blocks, glass panes, and arrows flying everywhere. However, one way to include multiple style elements together is by adding a theme that will justify this variation of style elements by keeping everything coherent. Themes can also help bring new ideas or new possibilities to your course. For example, a course with a jungle theme could include cocoa bean pods and vines, a more mechanical industrial theme could include pistons, chains, and moving blocks, or a nether theme could include lava, magma blocks, and sand. Of course, a theme is never mandatory. If you really want to include two specific elements and cannot find a theme to tie them together, just make it however you see fit. It's really not a problem. Always keep in mind that the priority is fun, so don't stop yourself from building something fun just because you're not able to justify it with a theme. Speaking of fun, this brings the third part that I want to talk about, the difficulty. Difficulty needs to be balanced. If it's too easy, the game will be boring. And if it's too hard, players might just give up after a few tries. Like for any game, it is very important to keep in mind the user experience and how they will react to what you put in front of them. If you want to spend a lot of time making an amazing parkour course, you normally want people to spend time playing it. You don't want them to beat it first try in 15 seconds, and you don't want them to give up after 2 attempts. There needs to be balance and progression in difficulty, and your players need to know that they can beat the game. If you want to make it long and difficult, I would also suggest adding in some checkpoints to split up the entire course and avoid forcing your players to repeat the first challenges. As an added bonus, it will reward your player for beating each section, improving their motivation to go on with the course. You can then organize each section to have the difficulty progression that you want. In general, you want each section to be harder than the previous one to give it a generally increasing difficulty. Within a section, however, you have more leeway as to where you want to place the harder challenges. In my opinion, the longer a section is, the earlier the hardest challenge should be. The idea here is again to avoid making your players repeat the earlier parts too many times. Now let's take a look at what kind of parkour course I will be including in my siege simulator. This parkour course has the particularity that it will involve an opponent. While you are trying to beat it, someone will try to stop your climb by shooting arrows at a target block. I want to make it so that the opponent will have to shoot on average 5 arrows to stop the player. This takes about 5 seconds without counting the time between shots and the time it will take the opponent to get in place and start shooting. Since I want the advantage to be on the side of the defender for this part, I want the parkour to take 7 or 8 seconds to beat without hesitating or making any mistakes. This means that the parkour part of the game will need to be pretty short and to be quite easy to still give the invader a chance to win. So I decided to make it have 7 jumps and to have the hardest one be over a 3 block gap that goes up by half a block, which should not be a very hard challenge. This last jump might be a bit of a challenge for someone who's not too experienced, but with some practice it should be okay. There is another part of the game that can give temporary bonuses for the parkour course. That part will be described in a future episode, but we can still look at what these bonuses will be. There will be 2 bonuses that will each add a block to the course. One block will be here, and the other one will be here. Each one will cut a jump in half, and together they will also give you the possibility to cut the course short by adding a slightly harder jump. There are 2 things that we still need to take care of for this game. First, let's look at this pressure plate. This is where you start the game. It will allow you to reset the parkour course so that you can start climbing it. But it will also warn your opponent that you are climbing the walls so that they can react accordingly. There will also be a tripwire that activates when you leave the area to close the game and warn your opponent that you are no longer attempting to climb the walls. This part is important because it prevents the invader from spamming the alarm without climbing the walls to waste the defender's time. And finally, let's look at what happens when you reach the top of the course. On the last step, you will be able to press a button that will launch an assault on the castle, giving your opponent a new challenge that will be explained in a future video. Pressing this button will also push you off the course and prevent you from climbing up as long as your opponent has not cleared the assault. So this is it for the parkour part of the Siege Simulator. In the next episode, we will be taking a look at bow shooting games and how they will be implemented in my game. I hope you enjoyed and see you in the next one.